Good afternoon all. I hope you had a good lunch. It's not nap time yet, but thanks for joining us. As a quick introduction, my name's Sir Ruben. I work with Tridant as a client executive. For those of you that are not aware of Tridant, Tridant is a Anaplan implementation partner. We started about 15 years ago in the planning space, and as an organisation have grown to about 100 consultants across Australia, Singapore, South Africa, and I think Indonesia as well. We work across the planning space with technologies like Anaplan, Workday Adaptive, IBM, but also have a big focus in the data analytics space with regards to Tableau, Power BI, Alteryx, and warehousing. Today I've got one of my first customers that I brought on with Tridant, with EROAD, with both Margaret and Kim. So Margaret, Kim, I'll let you introduce yourself and give us a bit of background with regards to EROAD and what your organisation does.
Hi everyone. I said to my neighbour at the table, we're about to be the next people who talk to you, and he's not back, so I'm thinking, so someone wave if we're boring you guys senseless at any point in time. EROAD is a tech company. It is currently listed on both the NZX and the ASX, although unless you have a fleet that you manage, you probably haven't heard of us. It's hardware-enabled SaaS services. So what that means is that we put a piece of hardware into a vehicle and it helps the company monitor that vehicle, whether it's from safety, quality, compliance with regulations. So examples of stuff, in New Zealand we've got road user charging, so we help customers monitor all that. Other places, we're in the US as well, and we've got concrete mixers with sensors in them that help the customer understand the best point in time to get that concrete to the site so it's optimal for pouring. So it's quite a wide range of things the product enables.
And I'm Kim, I'm the Financial Accounting Manager, and part of my role is the forecasting, budgeting processes, which is why we're sitting here today.
Great, thanks for that. So let's start with, I guess, that first conversation around the challenges and the issues that you were having and what you were trying to achieve with the tool.
Sure. So we first reached out to Tridant following my first budgeting round at EROAD, where the experience was we had 57 spreadsheets, and each of those spreadsheets had between 20 and 30 tabs on it, and they interlinked in between them. And the night before the board meeting to present that budget, we found a large error in the budgets, and we just went, we can't keep doing this. Well, I went, I'm not going to do this again. And so we got to the point where we went, there's got to be a better way. At the same time, we were going through due diligence to purchase another group of companies. And so we kind of went, hang on, we'd had a very stable business model and commercial model for a very long time. And that was starting to change, both with the acquisition, but also in the breadth of products we were looking at delivering. So we kind of went, something's got to change.
And it's not just that budgeting process that was huge. We had this huge spreadsheet and this big process, but we also, of course, tried to forecast every month, and that had a completely different model. It was way simplistic, and it couldn't provide all the information we need for things such as metrics, etc. So we had, things at two scales at the end, and neither of them tied up. So it was a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah, it was an interesting second call, I think, when Spencer, one of our master Anaplanners, opened up one of the spreadsheets and said, wow, how do you guys do this on a day-to-day basis? And I think Margaret was a bit PG in how she responded, but we'll leave that there.
That we ultimately needed, one, a global solution that could help it, because we've got finance teams in the US as well as in New Zealand, and we needed something that was robust enough. It didn't matter if the architect of the spreadsheet left the business. We could all still use it and understand it.
Yeah. And then I think what would be, good for the room here is understanding how did you go through the process of selecting a tool? How did you build out, the business case? And just giving, I guess, the room an idea of that process.
So we, after that budgeting process and with all the frustrations we were having with forecasting, we felt like we wanted to stop spending our time on the process, but on the actual numbers. That was a big thing for us. We were spending our time hunting where a number had come from, not looking at the number and what it meant. So we reached out to, actually via one of the team members, had a family member who worked in a place that were getting rid of spreadsheets altogether. That was their motto in their finance system. They were in their finance team, they wanted to use no spreadsheets and have no reliance on spreadsheets. And so I immediately went, well, how are they going to do budgeting without a spreadsheet? And they introduced us through that contact to Tridant and Anaplan, actually, is where it got to. And so Tridant came in and demoed for us. We spent quite a lot of time in the due diligence process with them. They did a number of demos, they did a number of conversations with us to understand our business model. We have some quite weird accounting treatment we have to do by the nature of the business, because we run effectively a rental model, but we stay in control of the assets, so that drives some quite unusual treatments that we have to do. And so I really wanted to make sure that they understood what we needed and the tool could do what we wanted. So having done that and having done that due diligence with Tridant, we actually then didn't go much further than that. We knew that there might be other products out there that could do the same thing, but we could see that this one Anaplan met what we needed, and it was what we needed, and we went, well, there was not a lot of point going and investigating 10 more products. So from that point, we went into a business case to demonstrate the value, and ultimately the value is from that, taking the noise away from the process and back and looking at the value of the numbers and what's being produced and what that means.
And I guess one of the big factors we had in the back of our heads was the time constraint. So we were heading towards a budget deadline, obviously, to get the budget out, and we were looking for people who could work with us to meet that deadline. That was important.
Great. So looking at going through that build and what the solution looked like, where do you believe you're currently at from a solution point of view?
So we intentionally we're going to try and build minimum viable product. So we focused only on the finance end of planning, so effectively budgeting and forecasting. Our intention longer term is to work out how much further we can bring the Anaplan tool through our planning process. So we have manufacturing, we have external supply chain management, as well as our own internal manufacturing processes, and then we have the SaaS charging component at the other end. So we have a reasonably end-to-end commercial model. Overlaid with that, we have different variations on how we bill and what we do, and variations in terms of our product. So we're after our internal planning system as a process of looking at what products we're developing, because we're a SaaS company, it's fairly fast moving, what products we're developing, through to what's the demand for those products, through to what's the supply and the global supply chain challenges we're having at the moment, into financialisation. And what we're trying to look to is use Anaplan to be able to financialise each of those steps as they're happening live. So we can kind of start talking about what we're going to do about it, as opposed to how we financialise it.
Okay, great. So from an outcomes point of view, do you believe that you have the skill set, the team to, I guess, drive this forward as an organisation?
When we went through the project, we did a co-build model. So that involved Tridant as part of the project, plus EROAD provided 3 team members. So like we said, we had quite a tight time frame, but we quickly trained 3 of us up as builders, level 1 and 2 model builders. And so we built part of that model with it. So it means that coming out of the other side of the project, we're actually quite confident with the model, with making improvements, understanding the inputs and what the model is doing behind the scenes. So that's been a real advantage to EROAD to come out that other side.
And look, we all look to put in systems and have people that have systems that go beyond people leaving your team, and actually having Tridant involved has been really useful, because we actively chose to do 3 people on the team so that we could have breadth of skill in the team. But if they leave at any point in time, Tridant also understand the model. Yopi, who is one of the most outstanding people I've met in terms of implementations, he can also. We pick up the phone and ring him all the time. I don't know that he loves that, but we love it.
I think also another good point to look at is, I think, for those that are maybe looking to implement a tool within their organisations. What were the lessons learned? We see a lot of organisations implement tools across the board, but it's not always as hunky-dory and perfect, a perfect implementation. So what were some of those lessons that you learnt throughout the process?
But we were sitting in a position, I mean, I've already described a little bit of what EROAD was going through, but we also did a very large acquisition that was settled on the 1st of December. So we had all those spreadsheets we've described, and come the 1st of December, we'd done a $188 million deal to settle this company, and we had about 8 to 10 weeks to produce a joint budget for the board. And so when we said to Tridant, we want to do this, but we're going to do it in what do we do, 8 weeks, 10 weeks? And that's part of the reason we chose minimum viable product and narrowed it to just the finance and forecasting element. We kind of went, goodness me, and it was fair to say Yoppie spent a bit of time trying to manage our expectations, so we had to step into that and go, no, we're committed to this timeline, and we'll give you whatever resource you need and make sure that we're there to deliver our side of it and do the co-build. So that meant Kim had I think she got Christmas Day off, that Christmas period. Every other day she worked through. When they said to me, I think they were testing me when they said to me, on New Year's Day, we want you to come to a go, no-go meeting. And I was like, okay, I'll be there. So there was quite a lot through it. So we were very clear on our scope and what we were trying to deliver. We were very clear on the time frame, and we were very dedicated to making sure we did our part in that process to make sure it was delivered. Not everything went perfectly. In hindsight, we effectively replicated what we were doing in those spreadsheets to some degree, and some of that was driven by the fact that we did have a very short time. If I was doing it again, I would try and step back and go, is there a different way of thinking about this rather than try to replicate what we were doing in spreadsheet? So we're starting to do that thinking now.
Yeah, and one of the other learnings from this project, but also other projects I've been in, it's always around that data. And, if I was going to say anything, start looking at your data now, make sure it's clean, because every project I've been in, we're normally moving dirty data, and you move it across as dirty data, and that always influences everything. And so that's one of my key learnings from all the projects I've been on.
We have also stolen some of Tridant's processes and how they do things, which kind of might be considered normal project management practice, but for us, they worked. They really worked in a very condensed time frame. So there's a few things we've stolen from them in terms of how we've done stuff subsequently.
So I guess going through the journey with where you've got to today with Anaplan, would you look back at any other tool, or are you happy with what you have at the moment?
No, we love Anaplan. And I haven't necessarily said that to them. That's not why they've got us on stage. It as with any tool, does it do exactly what we want in the moment, every moment? No, we've got to do development of it all the time and think about our business model and what we need. But, the conversations we had through this last budgeting round have been, what's that number mean and why? Not, where did you find that number? And then the forecasting, if our board says to us, hang on, the forecast says X and the budget says Y. We know they're consistent. We know everything's been run consistently. We know that was one of the big things with the spreadsheet is you'd then do your forecasting. The board would say, how does that compare to the budget? We couldn't answer that question. If we remap stuff now, so we're just looking through how with the new commercial models we're looking through how we remap to present different pictures to our board. And of course, the tool enables us to remap the budget, the actuals and the forecast all the way through the process. So, the first time I ran it, and I could go in myself and I could run a dashboard that showed me the group result, and I could do that by region, by currency, by, by company, by resource centre, by cost centre even. Like I can choose what I want as drop downs, and it's very simple to use. I was sold.
Yeah, and I'd reiterate that confidence in the numbers that's coming through. So we're confident we understand where the numbers are coming from, what the modelling is behind the numbers. So if we're questioning a number, it's around the assumptions that have been used to build it. But it just moves us streets ahead from where we've been. Great.
And I think also that drill down functionality that just wasn't there.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's so quick to look at a number and go, well, that looks a bit strange, and the drill down function just takes you right back to those key assumptions.
Great. So let's talk about the future. What's the future hold with Anaplan and EROAD?
So as we talked about, we've got an integrated business model. We're keen to get to a point that we're updating our product roadmap and we can financialise that. Then we can financialise the demand live as the sales guys are giving us information. So I was listening to the Accenture lady earlier and thinking we're streaks away from where they've described, but we do have pipelines, we do financialise them. It'd be great to get that integrated and linking through into Anaplan. And then that automatically feed into our supply chain and our planning for that. So,
and how are you going to bring your supply chain team on that journey?
Slowly. Actually, that's not fair. They're actually chomping at the bit. The interesting thing for me is usually you bring in a new piece of software into the business and you find people, particularly if it's a finance piece of software, people bury their heads in the sand and go, no thanks, don't want to hear about that. We've kind of almost from the word go had people outside of finance going, oh, I've heard about that tool and I've heard it's really good, and they're kind of seeing what they're getting and seeing the improvement in what they're getting from the finance team and kind of going, can we use that in our own space? So I joke a bit, but the supply chain guys really do want to take the opportunity to use it as well.
Well, great. Well, thank you both for your time today, and we enjoy the partnership and we hope to continue it over many years. And thanks for listening. Cheers.
And if anyone's got any questions particularly, more than happy to help.